booties for black girl nerds.
This show, it kind of caught me a little bit by surprise because I saw the film and it definitely had comedic elements, but overall it was very dramatic. And once we get into a STARZ show, it has its dramatic elements, but it's also extremely comedic. It almost kind of like a throwback 90s sitcom. Starting with you, David, can you kind of talk about the decision to kind of switch up the tone a little bit?
Well, I like that you described it as a throwback 90s sitcom because I love sitcoms. And that was like one of the early conversations, like we're making a sitcom. That is what it is. And so like we tried to follow that format. But I think it's short format, it's 30 minutes. And so the easiest way I think to relate to somebody is through humor, right? And so I think it's the quickest way to bring people in. That was also true of the film. The film ends really heavy, but like it starts really funny. Mm-hmm. And that's intentional. That's so that we get into it and we're in it and we're in love, right? We try to make people fall in love with your characters, and that's really it. And so, but what we learned through season 1 is that like actually there was even more space for humor. We were sort of like, we're talking about serious things. We were trying to get the balance right. And after the first season was finished, we were like, oh, this is serious things. And it actually makes those moments hit harder the funnier we can be. So we really came into season 2 with the intention of doubling the jokes, to try and make it, to make us fall in love easier and faster. And because I honestly think you relate to the characters more when they're being funny. It is the easiest way to relate to them. And so once we're in there, then you don't have to do much to understand the gravity of the situation. All you do is point the camera over here, right? So all you do is look out the window at the prison guard.
I love it.
Get it.
Now, Rafael, I wanted to ask you about we have a lot of choreographed moments. We have a lot of spoken word moments. And I know that's kind of something that you and David both have a background in and both have a passion for. Tell me, in terms of storytelling, how do those elements kind of elevate your narrative?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we both have sort of a background in rap and poetry. And so obviously like elevated language, poetic language has always been a way to, have access to metaphor, have access to, language outside of dialogue, which can just be a bit more impactful. That also comes a lot on the show with a direct address to camera, which, as we know, breaking the fourth wall does a thing for an audience as well. So I think for early on for us, and we both have a love for movement. Neither one of us are dancers, but we came up in a region that is very proud of the kinds of dance that come from it. And that is an expression of a community of people that we felt was another way that we could elaborate on bringing people into the Bay Area in a short form way, right? Because we don't have a lot of time in the show. And so when we thought about these two elements being sort of prominent in the show, we had to come up with some clear rules of like, all right, well, we can't just like break out in a dance or break out in a verse or reason for doing it. Otherwise, it's going to seem really weird. And so for the people that lean into it and understand why it's happening, the rules start to reveal itself. But for here, I can just spit them out to you. Like verse, for me, has always been about Ashley is alone in an experience and needs to process what's happening by herself or like through journaling. And so to me, all of the verses are like things she's writing to herself to try to make sense of the time that she's in. And I always thought, oh, she's going to share these with Sean when he's an adult. And so these are like kind of like little poems about this time, this confusing time in his life. They're always sort of trying to articulate the chaos of herself, which I think in a lot of ways, Sean is like the audience later, right? Like she's trying to get some sympathy. Like, this is hard. This is what I'm going through. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful struggle. That's why the language is beautiful. It's trying to make her the hero. The opening line is, listen to me, let me guide you. Don't listen to everyone else. Be on my team. That's the opening of the series. And from there it continues. And so that's verse. And the direct address to camera is the appeal to the audience, which is kind of an appeal to Sean. The movement has always been about articulating the weight of the prison industrial complex on all of the characters. So in the early parts of the first season, it's very casual. Like we have they first appear moving them into the house. But if you think about it, the only reason they have to move is because they got kicked out of the other house because Miles got hauled off to prison. And then as we went in the series, we're like, let's get a little bit more focused about when we use movement. And so there's like a big one in episode 4 that is her remembering the past of Miles and Colin, who have now both been through the prison industrial complex. One has gone through it and left. The other one is currently in it. Episode 6, when she has to tell Sean that her son is in prison, the men are lined through the house, taking her up to the bedroom where this conversation needs to happen. And so for us, season 2 is just a double down of that. Like we don't have a lot of movement, but when we do, it's because this force that shouldn't be a part of her life is there. And it defies language. It's things that she shouldn't have to explain. And so it's our best version of how do we express this feeling for the audience that is impossible to articulate.
I think that's so beautifully said. And I think it comes through definitely in the narrative. There are some moments that are just, it just catches you off guard, and you might not have the words for it, but that movement, it just makes it so relatable. So thank you both for taking time to talk with me about the show today. I could talk about it all day. It's so good. And the second season, I've only a few episodes in, but everything I've seen, I am ready to go. So thank you again.
We love Black Girl Nerds.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, big fans over here. So
wonderful. And David, I love doing extrapolations.
Shoot. Thank you.
All right, that's me. Thank you. Have a great day. Jasmine, I just recently spoke with Ron about Truth Be Told season 3, and he spoke so highly of you and everything.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Well, I love you in the show. And it's so funny because I was Hamilton through and through, such a stan. And there's something about this kind of renaissance of artsy Black folk who are creating these series that have such artistic elements when it comes to spoken word, when it comes to dance and that kind of thing. Tell me about basically kind of how you got involved with the series, and just kind of your point of view from an artist perspective, being able to kind of showcase that out within this kind of traditional sitcom.
Yeah, so I was involved in Blindspotting the film. I actually did like one of the first table reads of the movie and read all the women roles. So this Blindspotting is a little bit of my baby as well, just because I feel like I've been involved so early in the process. And yeah, I did the film, and after I did the film, I got a call from Rafa and David, and they were like, would you want to do this TV show, and would you want to lead it and go through the narrative of Ashley and kind of shed light on not only the people that are affected by the prison system inside, but also all of the families, and particularly a lot of these women that kind of do everything to keep these families, together. The Jill of all trades, the superhero women that do this. And immediately I was like, absolutely. And Rafa and David, they have spoken word backgrounds. They've done a lot of theater, and that's my background as well. And I think you really see it in this TV show. There's nothing like it. I remember when Rafael first showed me the verse of Ashley taking a tennis racket after having it up to here and, looking into the camera and doing this like incredible Shakespearean kind of heightened verse, and being the voice for so many women, and then particularly like women of color, of just, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, absolutely, I'm this vessel. This is why I do this, important art. And that makes people think and start conversations. Like that's why I do this in the first place. So to have kind of like the heightened verse and also the choreography, which basically kind of represents the PTSD of the prison system, it's such a out of the box way of telling these stories that happen every single day and is a very like normal thing in people's lives.
Right.
So I'm honestly just honored and happy to be here, and I really get to grind my teeth into this nuanced, complicated and amazing character that's Ashley.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, it kind of explores the lives of these women who are the backbone. There's a scene where you're in the library finding books, or Rainey, excuse me, is at the bookstore finding books for, how to tell your kid that his dad went to jail. And it was all these things that says, my dad is in jail. What do I do? The first time my daddy went to jail, daddy's in another place. And we don't get the narrative of mom, it's about daddy, because that's kind of the overarching theme. We also see that builds up within Ashley to the point where it's not even that she's due for an explosion. It's that she has been exploding, but then covering it up as quickly as she can,
covering it up for her family and for, especially covering up for her son, so like in those heightened moments, it's almost, we almost pictured it as these kind of love letters to her son when he gets older, when he reads. So he kind of really understands the process and the emotional process of what she was going to. We always say like those heightened verses are actually her talking to Sean when he's older.
Right. I love that. I think that's such a neat little kind of area to it. Also, season 2, of course, we open and she's at peak stress level.
Oh yeah, she lost it. We've opened and she's gone. Yeah.
How are we going to see that kind of develop through season 2? Are we finally going to see her be able to explode in a healthy way, or is it just more kind of repression?
I don't want to give too much away, but I don't think Ashley handles anything in the healthy way. The healthy way is going to therapy, is bringing the family together, sitting them down at the table. Let's talk today about how we should handle this situation. Because I don't think she technically exactly knows how to do that. All she knows is like how to try to do her best. And I think while she's trying to do that, she's also trying to connect to her older self and her individuality. I think she feels like she's losing her sense of self. And so she really does go down a bit of a dark hole this season. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a ride. Season 1 was crazy, but this season's a bit, it's crazier. You think, can this show get even more wild than the first season? And you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, they did that.
And I think wild is a perfect descriptor.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about this wonderful little gem of a show. And congratulations. I can't wait for more people to see it.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love your background.
Helen, how are you today? You look
good.
Fantastic.
I'm dolled up, even though it's early, so I'm good.
There we go. Well, I love seeing you. I'm of the era of Mad About You, and so I've been in.
You're a little young for the era of Mad About You.
Oh,
Your mom was into Mad About You.
I wish. No, I love
okay.
Mad About You.
I'll take it.
I loved it because it kind of cemented your kind of overview as like a person. So when I heard that you were going to be playing this part, I said, of course, that is Helen Hunt. What do you think it is about Rainey that is peak Helen Hunt? What is it that you kind of relate to in her?
Well, the secret is everything. I thought when I was first asked to play this part, like, I got to go to work. I'm not from Oakland. This isn't my life story. And I did a bunch of work on it and came all the way back around and said to Rafa and David one day, this part is kind of me, right? And they were like, yeah, basically you. Big, loud, liberal, Birkenstock wearing mommy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I did a lot of work, but I don't know if I needed to. I think I did for my own head, but I relate to how much she cares about her kid and how much she cares about her family and how much she loves that her home is the center of family and how she'd, walk in front of a bus for her grandson. And she's loud about what she sees and what she believes and what she knows and what people aren't talking about. And, at my best, I'm that way.
I love that she definitely, it's a decision, it's a choice to be kind of a white woman in that world and say, I am going to surround myself with people of color. I'm going to be within this kind of certain socioeconomic class because this is where I feel more myself, more home. Do you
Me
think
or her
that,
or Rainey?
for Rainey, but or do you think that that is accurate, or is there
Well, it's
something
not
more?
quite a choice because it's her family. And I think the backstory of Rainey is she lived there not only before gentrification, like I think I've got it right that Rafa saw it as white liberal, multiracial community gentrification white, like it had that cycle and she was there from the beginning. I think he would say that's right. So, her life happened and these are the people she loves and one of them is in terrible trouble and it's affecting everybody. And so she's going to keep the spirits of this child up, whatever it takes. And I have a feeling for that. I relate to that.
There is something to the idea, especially when we talk about Trish, where she says, it was a friend with a baster, that kind of thing, where, it was
forgot
really
that.
kind of, right. And there's something that it's not quite colorblind because the idea of race and everything is kind of prevalent, but it's not the headliner. It's more kind of the through line. Is that how you felt that she operates?
I just think it's all operating at a deeper level. Like this is her family. This is her blood. This is her, David's family next door may as well be blood. So it's almost like, I think, in this group of people, it just all runs deeper than that,
Right.
The love, frankly, between them runs at a lower level than even all of those questions. And they don't exclude those questions. She's not at all blind to the blackness and brownness that is her family. I just think there's a lot of imperfect love running through all of these relationships.
Well, I know within season 2, we kind of start with her and Ashley a little kind of at odds. And with Rainey kind of being like, I feel that I should be able to have some time with my son. And Ashley being like, but we're his family now. How do you kind of go about tackling that decision? Is it something that you personally kind of agree with Rainey with? Do you agree with Ashley, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I mean, I think any good drama, comedy, it's, it's not either or. Mm-hmm. Yes, Jasmine's character wants her immediate family and her time with her person. And yes, Rainey wants time with her son. I think Atticus, who plays, who's the youngest member of the cast, for me, he's sort of the key. Like, Rainey's going to make sure that kid gets through. That's the last thing she does. So I love the actor too. He and I are good pals on the set. So that's been really fun.
He's so adorable.
I feel like he's been my leading man through this show.
Yeah. Well, we also, so last season, it was kind of exposed that Rainey might be having some kind of memory care issues. Are we going to see more of that explored in season 2?
There's a little bit of it. She gets visited by some real anguish that she mostly pushes aside and makes food and makes a party and looks on the bright side, and then it comes to get her, and that's part of it. And and is that age, is that the stress of having your family exploded by a central member being incarcerated, it doesn't matter. One of the many things that she's struggling with is, why can't I think of that word,
Mhm.
And I don't think that's separate from the stress that she and families of incarcerated people go through.
Definitely. Well, I adore the show. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us about it, and congratulations.
Yeah.
It's truly something special.
Thank you for having me.
I adore you. I adored you since Good Trouble. And so when I started watching Blindspotting, I was like, so tell me about how you got involved with the series and kind of with that crew in particular.
The typical thing, I had to audition. So I auditioned for the role of Janelle, and oh my goodness, that in itself is a whole testimony. Praise God. But, yeah, so I auditioned for the role of Janelle, and then I went through the whole process and all that stuff. And then once I booked it, that's when things really started rolling. It was when we did season one, it was during the pandemic. So that was really difficult. But listen, we powered through, and somehow we were able to establish this rapport and relationship with each other, even though we had to be 6 feet apart.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it happened, just through I had an audition, and I kept the faith through the whole process, that I believed in the name of Jesus that this role was mine. I was meant to play Janelle. I never let go of that. And look what happened.
Well, I love it because you were fresh off the success of the One Woman Show, and I love that because it seems that you've always been with them, that you've always been with the troupe, you've always part of it. That rapport is already there. Had you known about the spoken word element of the show, the more kind of magical realism element, and was that something that kind of drew you initially to the role?
Oh my goodness, for sure. When you talk about things being ordained, right, and waiting on God's divine timing, I've been in Los Angeles 10 years, on my grind. And before I finally, this is my first, series regular role. And for this to be a show that really highlights spoken word poetry, which is something that I believe I'm gifted to do. I'm like, oh, that's nothing but you, God. And although Janelle isn't spitting any poetry yet, God willing, if we get a season 3, maybe. I'm still grateful to be a part of a show that is highlighting that medium, that particular art form, because me as a poet, I deeply believe in that as part of my way of storytelling, So no, I believe none of it's by accident, none of it's by coincidence, that this is the role that was my big, break, if you will. Happened to deal with something that God revealed to me years ago, Stacey. I will never forget. He told me, he was like, I'm going to bless your acting career through spoken word. And 7 years to the date is when I got to write and perform Dear Black Girl on which, I'm a big woman of faith, and I'm like, wow, God, look
There
at
it
that
is.
full circle. And then now for me to be a series regular on a show where heightened verse and spoken word is a big way of us telling the story, nothing but God.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned, you don't really have the solo part of it, because I'm like, put her in, coach, she's ready, let's go. But there are ways that you deliver your lines which are so musical. Particularly in season 1, there was a conversation about Blackness, and Sean was like, I'm Honey Brad, and just really starting that conversation. And we're like, oh, you think Blackness is this, what do you think of this? I know that there is always like a script, but was any part of that improvised? And what was it like kind of fleshing out that conversation?
For sure. I will say that's one of the things that I love and am so grateful to Rafael and David for, because they create such a collaborative workspace, and they're very open to suggestions or what they think will come natural to us as actors for our characters. And specifically with that episode 6, that conversation about colorism, that was a hard episode for me, because as a chocolate Black girl, that conversation wasn't foreign to me. You know,
Right.
I'm the eldest of 6, and all 6 of my siblings, all of us look different. 3 of my siblings are like the complexion of Jasmine, you know, on the show. And it's like, that conversation was literally things that I had to deal with growing up, you know? And I think it's very important that we had that conversation. I'm glad that we had it. Colorism is such an ugly disease that has been imprinted onto our community. So I think the more that we continue to have conversations about it, hopefully healing can begin, and hopefully the awareness of realizing that all of our melanin is beautiful, no matter the shade of it. And again, that's why I'm grateful for the opportunity to have written Dear Black Girl. And I was very honest, you know, growing up as a Black, like, I hated how I looked because I was always told that my chocolate was ugly, but the devil, okay?
Right.
Chocolate is beautiful. Yes, Stacey.
That's
So,
right.
you know, and more so, that's even why I'm so grateful to portray a character like Janelle, you know, to portray this brown skinned sister rocking locks who's from the Bay. We don't see that on TV, you know, and I'm just like, my heart, I'm just very, very grateful. I love the fact that we are showing that people like this exist, and people's who looks like this, their narratives are also important to tell. And I'm just really excited for y'all to see more of Janelle's journey.
And well, you know, that's the thing about Janelle is when it comes to love, I love that she is kind of, you know, she could be easily a side character, but she has so much depth in herself. And we learn about her relationship with Mustafa and kind of how impactful that was to her. I wanted to ask you, going into season 2, how does that affect her relationship with Earl?
Oh, Stacey. Girl, now hold on now. I can't be giving away. You trying to have me spill some tea, Stacey, okay? Unfortunately, I can't really say because it's gonna give away spoilers, you know. But all I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for y'all to see this. All I can say is Mustafa, Earl, like, you just gotta watch.
I can't wait. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get you in any trouble, but I absolutely cannot wait. You are fabulous in this role. The show is such a gem, and I can't wait for more people to watch it. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today, and congratulations.
Thank you, Stacey. You have a
I'm going
great
to DM you. I'm going to get some deets.
Yes, DM me.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.